So we're going to install these flush mount rod holders on our sit on top kayak. It's the Getaway 110. One of the first things you want to make sure is that you have the right depth of material for your flush mount to actually fit. So as you can see, I've chosen a spot where there should be plenty of room for the flush mount to sit nicely inside the kayak. You also want to have a flat surface to mount your rod holder in. So I've got this spot here which will do the trick. I know that on the inside of these kayaks there is some foam, so there's a chance that when we put once we cut the hole and we put the rod holder in, we might have to cut out a little bit of foam, which shouldn't be too hard with an X-Acto knife. So the first thing I want to do is take this gusset that conveniently came with the rod holder, and it actually comes with a little top, sort of weather protection. This actually works ideally as a way to trace the outline of where your rod holder is going to go. So I've chosen this flat surface and I kind of want to line it up in the direction that I want, facing the back of the boat. So I'm just going to start by making sure everything's in line, and I'm just going to trace the inside circle to start. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then I'm just going to make sure that I have a rough outline of the direction and exactly where I want the rod holder to go at the end. So that'll give me a little bit of an indication. Doesn't have to be perfect. This will do for now. The next thing we want to do is we want to find roughly the center of the hole, because we're gonna, or of the cutout, because we're gonna drill a little pilot hole. So you could use a straight edge, or you could eyeball it. I'm gonna use a straight edge. So this, once again, doesn't have to be perfect, but you need to have a rough idea of the center of your cutout for your pilot hole. So that'll give you an idea. I can already tell it's not perfect, but shouldn't be a problem. So next step up is to take a small drill bit. Doesn't have to be big. As you can see, I'm not even sure the measurement I have here of this drill bit, but it's tiny. And we're going to find the center, roughly the center of the cutout. And we're just gonna drill a bit of a pilot hole. It shouldn't take much pressure, and we'll just give it a little go. Perfect, goes right through. It's not super thick. And now we're gonna get ready for the scary part. This is the part where we're actually gonna put a big gaping hole in our kayak and hope that we don't mess it up. One thing that we wanna make sure we do is anything that we cut out from the kayak, we wanna keep in case we need to do any repairs later on, anything like that. So let me get the drill prepared, and we'll cut out the hole. So I'm using this circle cutter. As you can see, it's got some sharp teeth on the outside, and this bit here is going to go right into the pilot hole, and that'll hold it steady so it doesn't walk around. The size I've chosen is actually almost identical to the size of the diameter of the rod holder. It's slightly bigger. A little bit bigger is okay. Don't want it to be smaller, or else your rod holder won't fit. And if it's too big, then your screw holes aren't going to line up properly, and you're not going to have anywhere to screw in the rod holder. So a little bit bigger is sort of ideally what you want. So let's give this a shot. So this might take some time. We want to go slow and steady, and we want to make sure that we don't have the drill bit walk around. So let's go nice and slow to start. All right, nice and slow. There we have it. So we've got a little piece here. It's quite hot. I just wanted to show you the thickness of the kayak plastic. So this is the thickness of the hull. I don't know if you can see that. Pretty thin. But pretty rigid. Alright, so now we've got our hole here, and I'm looking in. I don't know if you can see that, but there is a nice chunk of foam right there, like we suspected. Which means we're gonna have to do a little bit more cutting. And I'll show you why. So if we try to insert the rod holder in the direction that we traced out, you can see it won't go flush because it needs to go in at an angle and it's hitting the foam. I could put it in this angle like this, but then the rod is going to be sticking onto the deck of our kayak, which is not what we want. So we'll get our X-Acto knife. We're going to cut out a small corner of the foam. This shouldn't affect the buoyancy at all. We're cutting off less than sort of, I guess, a 2-inch chunk off the corner of the foam. In fact, we could probably even just leave the foam in there. Anyway, I'll show you what we've done. I don't know if you can see that. There we go. And now let's see if the rod holder fits. Ah, looks like it fits like a charm. Beautiful. Next step, we need to figure out where our screw holes go. We'll mark those down with the Sharpie. We want to make sure everything's lined up just perfectly. Alright, so once we have our screw holes, you can see there's a little bit of room to spare on each side of the hole. We're going to now have to drill a pilot hole for each of the screw holes. I'll just prepare the drill and then I'll show you what we do. So now I'm going to use the same tiny little drill bit to drill some pilot holes. I've already made sure that it's well less than the diameter of the screws we're going to be using. You don't want to use a drill bit that's bigger than the screws, or else the screws won't even work. You'll have to go with bigger hardware. Big pain in the butt. So line them up with the center of your markings. Clear that off. And then we just want to do one last double check. Measure twice, cut once. Well, we've already cut, but before I actually go to the final step and glue everything down, because I could still change the location of the holes if need be. But they all line up here. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add some, you can either add a silicone adhesive, or what I've gone with is I've chosen to go with Goop Marine. This is an adhesive that's UV resistant, waterproof, pretty quick drying, and should do the trick. I haven't used this before for this procedure, but from the research I've done, it should work like a charm. So I would suggest wearing latex gloves or gloves with this. Actually, I don't even know if this reacts well with latex, but some sort of gloves, because it gets all over your hands and very sticky. As well, the nozzle, I'll show you if you can see here, is pretty wide. So to be able to put a very specific amount in the desired area is going to be tricky. So I would suggest using something like a toothpick to help spread out the adhesive once you've put it on. So I'm going to show you how to do this next. I want to make sure that I have everything ready, because once I put the adhesive on, I do want to make sure that it goes into its location relatively quickly. I don't want to be fumbling around with gloves on and everything. So I've put the gusset back on. It's rubber gusset. So I'm going to put a layer of glue between the gusset and the rod holder. You'll see this here. And then I'm gonna seal this nicely, and then I'm gonna do a nice little ring around the inside edge here, and then I'm gonna fasten it to the boat, and then I'm gonna screw it in. One thing I wanna make note of, I'm going to hand tighten this because I don't wanna strip the screws. Once you strip the screws on this stuff, you're kinda out of luck, and you're in for some fun repairs. So make sure you don't strip the screws. So let's get started here. You don't want to put tons. I think I probably put a little bit more than I wanted to, but it should be fine. All right, lay that down. Grab this. Just make sure I get a nice coating around every part of this. And then put the gusset on the right way. Then just make sure everything is slotted in properly. And some of the adhesive is already coming out, which is fine. There we go. I'm just gonna wipe a little bit of it off now. So now I'm gonna put final ring of adhesive right around here. Got a little bit, and I think ideally some of it will seep out of the screw holes and help lock in those screws a little bit. And that should be enough. I'm just gonna line that up. And this is one of the tricky parts, is it's kind of hard to see if your screw holes lined up properly. Looks like they did. So I'm gonna start with this one and hope for the best. Now it says 24 hours to cure. So yeah, now we wait. As you can tell, we're outside. You don't want it to get rained on. You don't really want it to be in direct sunlight. So I'm gonna wait half an hour or so. I'm gonna put the covers back on, make sure there's no leftover adhesive, and that should keep them dry and out of the sunlight. And that is a flush mount rod holder installed on your sit-on-top kayak.